So, my last video was to talk to you guys about my own experiences and creepy things that have happened in my life. Nothing too crazy. A lot of it was just sort of things that could be one thing or other, but there's no definitive thing like that was a monster, that was the Sasquatch, or that was a alien. No, I can't say any of that is for sure what it possibly could be. All I can say is that I experienced something strange. But in doing all my research on stuff, because ever since I've had these experiences, ever since I was a kid, I am fascinated by the supernatural. And again, I wouldn't really even say that I'm like a believer in a lot of the stuff. I think I'm, if anything, I'm more of a skeptic to it. Not because like I'm trying to be. It's just that just my analytical brain. That's just how I process things. I want to believe in this stuff. I would love to see that someday there are aliens or something, or that Bigfoot's a real thing. But just the evidence that I've seen so far has not truly convinced me yet. You know, anything could happen. But I want to give you guys some of the theories of what I think could possibly be going on right now. Some of them might be like real world interpretations. Some things might be supernatural. And so the first one I want to start off with is ghosts. I do not think that ghosts are what we've previously perceived them as like, someone who's died and is coming back to haunt a specific spot. To me, that's a very, very dour view of the afterlife. That means that when we die, wherever we died, we had to remain in that exact same spot forever. And whoever comes by, we get to go, ooh, or you get to move something off the table. That seems like an abysmal afterlife. And I really, really don't want to believe that that's what the afterlife is like. So going further than that, this isn't really the point, but I don't necessarily even believe in an afterlife to begin with. Not because like I'm just like a heathen or anything like that. I just feel like it doesn't make sense to have an afterlife. The way I look at it, either there is an afterlife, but it's basically just the same as this. We're just kind of living in like a loop or something. If there is an afterlife at all, that would maybe like reincarnation, or that maybe we go in our minds, and our minds will kind of like create the afterlife for us right before we die. Because they say that when you die, your brain releases DMT, and that kind of will create your dream for you. And again, or create the afterlife for you in your own mind, because our brains are alive like a couple seconds after we die. Depends on how you die. Like if your brain got destroyed when you die, like you just blew up, I guess that would imply that you wouldn't have an afterlife. But the way that I look at it, if there isn't an afterlife, for a long time I couldn't really figure out what that'd be like. And then I just realized that we've already all experienced what it's going to be like, of nothing. The idea of nothing we've experienced literally for billions of years, because what were you thinking, or what was life before you were born? Nothing. You don't have memory of being nothing for, billions of years. You just suddenly were. Here you are. You were kind of a little blip in the timeline, like this long billions of years, little blip of your life, and then billions and trillions of years after that. And it's not going to be like we're going to be terrified or like, oh my God, I'm dead. We're not going to be aware we're dead. We're just, and I kind of find that, and I used to think that was terrifying, but now I kind of think that, well, that's actually that's peaceful. What it means is that we're not going to have to worry about pain or have to deal with another life. Because after we're done with this life, I know for me, I'll be burned out by the time I'm 80, and I'll be like, all right, I'm ready to just rest. And I've had that experience, and obviously I'm not ready for that right now, but I know someday I'm probably going to feel like it's my time. And it's like, okay, time to go to bed and don't wake up. And I know that it would be kind of this big pressure that if you are ready to die, and then you realize, oh crap, I have to live the afterlife. I've already lived the living. Now I have to experience this whole other life. Can't I just have a break? But I don't know. I've never had a truly supernatural experience of the afterlife or anything like that. I've definitely had some weird experiences, but nothing that it would imply direct afterlife or direct connection to the soul. there are a few things that I will kind of make of note. I mentioned in my previous video that I saw that blue fireman guy walk into the woods. That could be anything. I don't know. But I have had experience of consciousness that made me kind of question what the soul or where my soul is and what happens, what can happen to it, what are the possibilities where it can go. One of the weird things was I used to be really into meditation. And I can't really get to my headspace back to meditation like I used to, which is unfortunate. But at the time, I got really into it. And there was one time where I was just meditating. I was trying to meditate on what it was like to be blind. I wanted to know because I couldn't picture what was it like to not see. Because I know it's not just black, because black is a color. You can't just it's the absence of sight. And I was trying to picture what it was like behind my head. What does it look like behind my head with me looking? It's not black. If I picture what's behind my head, it's not black. It's I don't have that sight. The sight is not there. And as I was doing that, I started to drift into this kind of meditative place of kind of like I was awake and then I was asleep and I was awake, but it was kind of very fluid, very kind of teetering on. And for a very brief moment, I found myself outside on a street, 82nd Street in Portland, Oregon, on the side of the curb, feeling as drunk as I've ever been, or that not necessarily drunk, but the way your brain is when you're like so blackout drunk that you're only getting glimpses of things. And for a brief moment, that's what it felt like. I could hear the street. I could feel just that massive dizziness and daze where I wasn't quite there, but I could feel the cold. And it lasted for maybe 2 seconds. And then I just kind of woke back up and I'm like, what just happened? And it honestly felt like I astral projected. And that sounds really crazy, especially for someone who's a skeptic like me, why I would say that. But that's what it felt like. And either my imagination is just really, really intense and I can just kind of come up with stuff like that. But I've never been able to come up with something that realistic before, like especially like temperature. I could actually feel like it's cold. It was in the middle of the winter and I was just on the street. Like in that moment, I didn't know where I was. I was confused. I didn't know I was meditating. Kind of like how people who are on a drug, they don't know they're on a drug. That's kind of I was just on the street and I can just look around. There's this weird kind of haze and just seeing cars pass by me, feeling cold and wondering, how did I get out here? And then blap, I'm back in my room. So I have no idea. Now, was my soul astral projecting? I have no idea. That could be. I don't see, if the soul is a real thing, I don't see why it can't be removed from the body before death if you can put it back. The only reason why it doesn't, we can't live forever is because our bodies decay. And so if our soul, can come back in our body, they'd just be inhabiting a decaying body. So this thing is like, I'm not sure if a soul even exists. I think maybe it could just be like in our consciousness. The soul is basically just awareness in the moment. And then once the body shuts off and dies, that consciousness evaporates. But I do know that energy does, it's like a rule of nature that energy can't just dissipate. It can't just go anywhere. And I don't think it does just disappear. I think it goes into, the earth. It goes into wherever you're laying or sitting, your energy just kind of flows out and just continues somewhere else. So I don't know. I'm hopeful that when the afterlife gets here, we'll know it and we'll be able to be comfortable with it. It won't be scary. It won't be like this big other ordeal, like we have to live life all over again. And I'm also fine with the idea that there's no afterlife and we just go to sleep and kind of like being on anesthesia. We are unaware that we're out. We're just gone back to where we were before we were born. Maybe it feels like when we're in that kind of a warm sort of like a womb-like state. Maybe that's what the death is once we are about to die, we kind of go back to where we were in the womb, just this tight, comfortable place. And then our brain just sort of dissipate and we're no longer. And that might sound scary, but I find it kind of comforting. I don't know. So anyway, got on a tangent of the afterlife, but I want to get back to ghosts. Here's a theory of what a ghost could possibly be. And this is this is like, let's just throw out all kind of scientific stuff. Maybe a ghost is a sort of blip in reality where we're seeing a glimpse of like another dimension, or we're seeing like the future or the past kind of dipping over in a bit. Maybe there's soft spots in the world where the past and the future and other dimensions can kind of like collide a little bit, and that's maybe why you see some old person from the 1800s standing in your living room. You're not looking at a ghost; you're looking at literally like a piece of the past, and it's just kind of like lingering in that little spot. That could be something. Another thing that ghosts could potentially be is just energy. Like there could be just kind of spots of energy that can make us either hallucinate that we're seeing something, or to the point where like the energy is just so powerful that things can move. Like something flies off a desk. What if there's like what if there's like little pockets of like gravitational distortions that just make things, magnetic distortion that just can move things around and maybe mess with your brain to make you think you're looking at something. Could be possible, you know. Everything is more plausible to me except the fact that those are our soul, that ghosts are our souls trapped in this one spot forever to haunt people. That's a really depressing idea of like when you die, your next day job as a ghost to haunt people. That's depressing. So those are my thoughts on ghosts. Now let's move on to let's say Sasquatch. And in my last video, I talked about how I saw and heard some very strange things that are similar to a lot of the stories talked about from people who talk about the Sasquatch, Bigfoot or Yeti or the Yowie. It's the basic description is a large humanoid, a large hairy humanoid that's walking upright. That doesn't look like a gorilla, doesn't look like a man, something in the between. And there's been people who've seen it, and some people have said that they've been attacked by it. I've heard stories. I mean, I have a guy, one of my friends. I had Thanksgiving with him last year. He was telling me about like he had his garden. He had an orchard, and it was raided by a bunch of Sasquatches, like little ones, big ones, and they were like shaking his trees, and they stole from him. And they stole his whole crop, or at least a good chunk of it, because there was like four or five of these big hulking, giants that were just had armfuls of apples, and they took half of his crop. It actually, no, it wasn't his crop; it was his neighbor's crop. And his neighbor came to him and went, "Why are you stealing my apples?" And my friend just like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "You stole my apples." Like, no, I didn't, but I saw something that did, and there's just dark figures about 9 feet tall. The family of them took half of your apples. Obviously, his neighbor was not happy and didn't believe him. But so that was just one example of a story. But here's the question: is if this thing really exists, and we have, I mean, there's a good chance that something is out there because based on how many people have experienced something or seen something, is everyone lying? Is everyone just kind of like deciding wouldn't it be cool if we all kind of came up with the same story? There's a big giant hairy ape. Or is there some truth to what they're saying? Are they really seeing this stuff? And personally, based on what I've seen, I think they're really seeing something. It's just a question of what they are seeing. And I know this argument has been talked about many times, is the idea that there was a Sasquatch at one point in history. A million years ago, there was the Gigantopithecus, which was literally like a 9-foot orangutan. There's not a whole lot of documentation on what it was like because they only have like bone fragments. They don't have the whole skeleton, so they don't know if it was a bipedal or a quadruped. But they do know that it was a very, very large gorilla. The other caveat is that it was found in Asia, which could be the Yeti. However, back in the Ice Age, there was the Bering Strait was once a land, and a big hulking giant like that could just walk over and like, I'm going to go check out this North America place with all these big spruce trees and geysers. Because I know the Native American Indians have talked about the Sasquatch, and that's where the legend comes from. Both Sasquatch, Native American mythology, and also in Mount Everest, Nepal, the Yeti. And so they both have kind of all the cultures that have a giant ape like that have kind of similar things, that it's this big man ape. And so it very well could be a surviving actual ape that is in brief moments walking on its hind legs, because gorillas can do that. I mean, they're creepy, but they can walk like this a little bit. So it could be a big gorilla or some kind of unknown gorilla that's been kind of wandering around. And maybe the height could have been exaggerated, because even with my own experience, from where I was standing, this thing looked about 9 feet tall. But who knows? Maybe it's just an illusion. It didn't look like an illusion to me, but I know there's a lot of other people that have said that they've seen things that are even like 15 feet tall, and that just seems a little bit like you. There's no way we could not see a 15-foot tall being, humanoid, wandering in the wilderness. That's got to show up somewhere. So it's going to be between 7 and 9 feet, I'm guessing, whatever this is. But if it's not a gorilla, what else could it be? So here's some pretty weird theories about that. These come from both my own research and from one of my friends who wrote a book, actually, the guy who with the apples and the Sasquatch. He actually wrote a book. What he claims is Sasquatch is that Sasquatch is an interdimensional being. That it kind of zips in and out of reality, and that's why we never can see it when we want it to, because as soon as we grab our phone out, it'll disappear, or as soon as we actually record it, it kind of makes it fuzzy. I remember that story of the missing 411 where that hunter lady took a photo of this weird predator distortion in the trees, and then the photo that she got when she tried to take it, all she could see was just this weird hair in front of it, and the rest of it was literally cut off. So whatever it did, it messed up the camera, so it couldn't take the whole picture of it. It just get a little glimpse of it. So maybe whatever this thing is, if it's interdimensional, it has the ability to kind of change, to make sure that it's unseen, whether changing our perception of it so we can't see it, or when we do see it, it disables our way to record it. The only recording that has been found that has been basically undisputed, that is a legitimate piece of footage, is there's two. It's the one from 1968, Patterson footage, I believe, where they just literally see a female Sasquatch just walk in there, and it kind of looks at them and just kind of goes on its way. That video is very compelling, even though there has been someone who's come out and say, "Oh, yeah, it was me in that gorilla suit," which sure, anybody could say that they did it, but he wasn't the one who made it. He just says, "Oh, yeah, I was the guy in that suit." But if you really look at that suit, it'd be pretty hard to fake in 1968. That's when Space Odyssey came out, and that movie looks great. The apes in that movie look great, but they still didn't look that good. So either back then there was some special effects artist who was way better than any movie that was made at the time, who just decided, instead of going to Hollywood, I'm going to make this little video and hope that it gets famous. I don't know. That feels a little kind of what was the point of that? So I don't think it was a fake, at least the fake the way that people are saying it's a fake. I think it could be something a little more, I don't know, something that we're not quite understanding what we're looking at. There could also just be literally a dude, an actual guy who's or feral humans. Maybe they're Neanderthals. Maybe Neanderthals have survived, and they've just gotten more and more hairy over the course of the last 100,000, 200, half a million years, however long Neanderthals died out. But who knows? They did die out, and there was a point where humans and Neanderthals coincided with each other. That to me that's suspicious, because where did they go? Were they wiped out by humans, or did they just suddenly just die out for no apparent reason, or did they go somewhere? Some people say that these Neanderthals decided to go underground. I've heard plenty of stories of cave-dwelling giants, or first of all, we get the Sasquatch, obviously, but also we get stories of these huge things that live in caves, like the Malta, the Italy little island. I think it's the island of Malta, where there's those 20-foot tall things that those kids saw and the kids were eaten. or the Kandar, or Kandar, whatever it was in Iraq. No, Afghanistan. Sorry, I'm not good at like the names of things. Anyway, there's in Afghanistan there was that big giant that the soldiers apparently found, and one was killed. That had big red hair, that was like 9, 10 feet tall, had a big spear, and just threw it at them, and they shot it and killed it. Now that's a compelling story. If you haven't heard that story, do look that up. Just look up Afghan giant, and it'll take you right to it. It's a very compelling story, but it's hard to say how much truth there is to to it. Anybody can make up the story, and there's no really record of who the guy who died was and where the body went. They picked the body up and took it somewhere else. There's no record of any kind of body, no photos, nothing. So who knows? That could be a fake. But that's just one thing. There's been stories throughout all of history, and like especially the Native American culture, where there's the mound builders, the giants that they talk about, or like in the Bible they talk about the Nephilim. So there's plenty of evidence throughout history that people were seeing something big, and either if these things were real, if this wasn't just fabrication or imagination, if these things were real, where did they go? Did they just die out? Were they killed by people, or they just kind of like their species die out because maybe like the oxygen level wasn't right and they just couldn't sustain their size anymore? Or did they go somewhere? That's the thing. I think if there was something like this, it'd be hard for them to all just suddenly die out. I think they had to have gone somewhere. So where are you going to go if the land is covered in humans, these pesky humans who like war? Where would you go? You could go underground. Cave systems all over the place that have massive complex of tunnels that could probably house whole civilizations of giants. Who knows? I mean, if you go to like the Headless Canyon or Headless Man Canyon, whatever the place is in Canada, there's like these giant cave systems that are like just the openings of these caves are like the size of a small building. They're huge, and they're unexplored because it's very hard to get to. There's no like trails up there, and it's very cold to get there in the winter. You got to go to there in the summer to really explore those. But even if you could explore them, the terrain is so rough that it's very dangerous. So often people stay away from those sort of things. And that's why I think if there is anything, that's why we haven't found anything, because we haven't really been able to explore the way we want you to get some more solid evidence of these giants. So if these giants are real, what are they? We could talk about the Sasquatch, Gigantopithecus. Giants need to have some kind of base in history, base in science too, if they're real. And if they are like the fallen angels that the Bible talks about, okay, I can believe that. But that's only if you're religious and believe in the Bible. Or are these Neanderthals that have just grown much bigger, and maybe the Sasquatch and these giants are kind of one and the same, just different species. One has hair, one has bald and just red hair and 2 sets of teeth or whatever. Or are these just people who are big that are humans, but they just are big and they wandered off into the wilderness and decided, I don't want to be around people, because there are real people in the world who have Gigantopithecus who can grow pretty big, and even people without it. I think the tallest person without Gigantopithecus, what am I saying? Gigantopithecus, gigantism, not Gigantopithecus, gigantism. I think was up to like almost 8 feet tall. Someone without gigantism, they're just a normal person. They're just a big person. They're out there. So who knows? Maybe just like there's people who are feral who are huge, and maybe their diets made them big. I don't know. By the way, Sasquatch Giants, very interesting topic to me. One that I am very fascinated by because of just how much of it is ingrained in every single culture. Every culture has giants. Every culture has some big humanoid god, And even without the giants part, there's every culture also, of course, has things from the sky. And that brings me to UFOs, aliens, or whatever. What are they? What are aliens? And, this could all be tied with the giants and the Sasquatches. maybe even ghosts, even maybe they can all be one thing. We're looking at just little pieces of different things, but it's all, we're looking at one entity. And with aliens, you can go on for years talking about theories of what these things are, because look at space. Space is gigantic. It's so impossibly big that even thinking about it can make you go mad. I remember I had a night where I just was trying to think about like what it was like to like have like a pole that was forever long, and if you threw it down, you just keep going and it would never stop. There's no ground that doesn't hit anything. It just keeps going forever. So in an infinite space over, billions of years, there's got to be other civilizations out there, or at the very least, just actual organic beings. Maybe you don't have the technology, but there's got to be. It's the likeliness of that is it does not seem likely that we're alone in the universe. We might be alone in our solar system, or our galaxy, or even our cluster of galaxies. We might be the only species in trillions of light years. So where we basically would be alone in the universe, at least as far as our capability of traveling would be concerned. But maybe life is abundant way, way, way out into the infinity. Maybe across, billions and trillions of miles and light years, there is a civilization. Maybe there's maybe the universe is so big that we exist somewhere out there, the same version of us. Because in an infinite universe, in an infinite time span, anything can happen. So molecules can all kind of form together, and we are basically, our copies are somewhere in this universe. That's going a little too far, but what I'm saying is that the universe is big. So if the universe was that big and there are species and one of them could travel here, what are some ways they could have got here? Because certainly if you traveled to Earth from even the closest star would be years. The closest star is as far away as like I am to like or in Portland, Oregon, all the way to like, Los Angeles. That's the closest star. And if my phone was a star, that's how far away the closest star is to us. And that's just even if that one even had life at all. If the closest star with life, that could be even further, 10 trillion times further. So how would an alien get here from that distance? Well, they obviously can't fly because that would take forever. But there's also warp drives. There's portals. What if these things can manipulate portals, fold space and time? What if these things are part of this, or from this dimensional rift? I mean, we might not even be talking about like the aliens in the conventional sense. We could be talking about interdimensionals, or maybe like the universe has folded in on itself, so we're looking at the other side of the universe. These things are basically from the other side of the universe. If the universe is not infinite and it becomes in a loop, maybe these things are from the other side of the universe, and they're able to kind of connect right back to us. So they could be interdimensionals, they could be Sasquatches, they could be ghosts, all part of this cluster of things. I don't know, but it's an exciting thing to think about, like the possibilities of all these things. Like, here's the ones that I think is the most likely. I do think aliens, UFOs are the most likely, mostly because the government is starting to admit it, which I find very strange. Because for the last 50, 70 years, the government has been saying, there's no aliens, there's no UFOs or whatever like that. Then Bob Lazar comes out and says, actually, I worked on one of the ships that you guys hired me to work on. And more than that, his what he's talked about has been shown, like the way that the ships fly. We captured that video of the Nimitz, and or the Tic Tac, where it has that, or I think it was the spindle top, whatever it was. But the ship flew like this, just like how Bob Lazar said. The ships don't fly like this, like a flying saucer. They fly like this, belly first. And there's a video of one flying just like that. And that was just one ship, because he said that there was at least 9 of them. They all had different shapes. And, people have said they see all kinds of shapes in the sky. The one that I saw definitely looked like a disc, but I do remember there was some, thinking back, there was a little dots of light kind of like looking like they're rotating around it. But it was a disc shape. But people have said they've seen triangles or pyramids or like cubes. Some people have seen. I had a friend who said he literally just saw a square in the sky, like a pixel, a big old pixel, kind of like just flipping out. I mean, like it could be anything. But the point is, if they have these ships, there's not just one shape. There's all kinds of shapes, and these ships might not even be from the same species. Because think about like what people have described these aliens, the sightings that we have seen, what the aliens have described by. The one that kind of is the most consistent is the Greys. Everyone's talked about Greys. That has been relatively consistent throughout at least the last 100 years. But the one that was even more consistent is the Reptilians, because those have been in mythology. Those have been like gods, have been like these lizard people. And I find that kind of frightening, because when you're in a deep DMT trip and you look in the mirror at yourself, you slowly start to become a lizard or like some kind of reptilian-like looking thing. And I find that strange. Like that may, what if we're looking at what if like we are reptilians and just our skin is sort of like just what our brains are showing. But what if when you're on DMT, you're seeing what you really look like? And what if when you're whatever state we're right now is blocking our minds from even knowing what species we are? What if when we smoke DMT, all that is wiped away? We see what we really look like, and our brains know, like, oh, I'm a lizard, I'm a reptilian, I'm an interdimensional, or I'm a god. I don't know, because a lot of people have said who've done that have had very similar experiences, that they feel that they are God or that they look like reptilian, and it's like a universal thing. That to me is very, very, very creepy. So I don't know if that's really what it is. So maybe there's some, because I know some people who've done DMT and they haven't seen any of that kind of stuff. So what that might mean is that there could be the UFO, the reptilians, and then there could be like the real people, and maybe like we're so closely like engraved into society that we can't even tell each other apart anymore. The aliens can't even tell that they're alien or human until they take the button or the drug, and that kind of reminds them, like, oh yeah, that's right. This is a game. This is a program. I'm in a there's the NPCs and then there's me, and I'm one of the players. That's why a lot of people say when they're on DMT, it's kind of an experience of feeling like, oh, okay, I'm in a simulation. That's why there's all these pixels everywhere, and why the real world really looks like this, which is what people describe as like the fractal or the hyperspace. That's like the real reality. And what we're looking at is just sort of a projection or a hologram, which I could believe that. I mean, just how weird things are and how inconsistent some of this, the science of the world and the weird things that happen, people see, like, this has got to be some kind of simulation, right? And if not, then do we just kind of just come from nothing? Do we just sort of like, and then there's all this stuff that kind of formed together? Or is there some kind of creator? And that brings me to the idea of God. And when I was going back from the aliens, people have talked about, that alien, that those gods came from space and came down and taught us things, gave us knowledge, and has people follow them, and someday they'll go with him to where he's at or where they're at, if you're poly or monotheistic. So I wonder, like, are these gods, if there is a God, wouldn't the description of a God doesn't sound just like an alien, like it come from down from the sky? So what we might be looking at are not gods. Maybe the creator, there is no creators. Or if they are creators, then I guess they would be gods, but not God in the traditional sense. What if the aliens or the beings or whatever, what if we're kind of just like a practice for them, or kind of like I said, or a program, that aliens are the gods, or maybe if there is an actual God, then he's much, much further out. Maybe he's the programmer. Maybe some nerd behind a desk typing in and all the code and coming up with even me saying this now and you watching this, that he programmed that into the simulation. So me even expressing to you as a viewer is part of the simulation. So it goes deeper and deeper and deeper the further you look at it. Which, believe me, I've gotten these kind of thought loops, and they've driven me, an anxiety attack essentially. So I don't know. God could be aliens. Aliens, Sasquatches could be aliens. Aliens could be interdimensional Sasquatch, ghosts, God things, all kinds of stuff. But I know this video kind of got a little bit disorganized with ideas, but those are just some of my thoughts on what these things could be. So yeah, what did we cover? We cover ghosts, aliens, Sasquatch, afterlife, God, simulation, and I don't know if anybody has any ideas of what else I can give my opinions on. But oh, how about werewolves? Why not? That's probably the least likely of any of the things that I've come across. I mean, I have heard plenty of stories of very strange wolf-like experiences, like at the Skinwalker, where that big like dire wolf showed up. But I've also seen pretty big wolves before. Like I was out in Alaska, and I saw this wolf running across a field with a bunch of cows, and this thing was almost the size of a cow. I'm like, that is the biggest wolf I've ever seen. So it could just be a dire wolf, or it's a man bit by a wolf who became a wolf, and he's both a man and a wolf at the same time. But you have to kill him with a silver bullet, or else it won't work. I don't know. I think the idea of vampires and werewolves, that is truly magic. I don't. Those are the least likely things. I do know vampires. In fact, I am a vampire. I'm a energy vampire, but that's more of like not a real. I'm not magic. I just have certain things where I suck people's energy out for myself. I can do that. I have the ability to drain people's energy. So in a way, I'm kind of a vampire, just not in a magical way. Werewolves, though, I don't really know how that could even fit into science. I mean, there's been no cases of like an animal with a certain ability to change another animal into something else. It's just the lichenism, I don't think, is a real thing. So if there are werewolves, I don't think they're people bitten by a wolf and suddenly become like a man wolf. I think they're just really big wolves out there, like dire wolves that are still existing. I don't know, but I know like I said, I know I've seen big wolves like that, but who knows what they are? But I don't think werewolves are what we think they are. And again, vampires, energy vampires, or actual blood-sucking vampires. The thing is, there are people who identify as vampires like me, but there's no actual superpowers of these vampires. It's all kind of just like spiritual powers, not necessarily like physical. Like I'm going to hypnotize you into giving me your energy. It's more of like just the way I present myself tends to drain people of energy. I don't know if that's really a positive thing, but that's what I got. But I definitely don't want to drink your blood. I don't want to get hepatitis or HIV or whatever. Sorry. But I do know people who do drink blood, not for any like health really reasons. They do it just because either that they think it's fun to pretend, or that it's a fetish. Which, believe me, I know, I know both ends of that spectrum. I know people who have done it for actual because it's a fetish to drink someone else's blood, which I don't understand. But you know what? To each their own. I'm not going to kink shame, as long as everyone's consenting and no one's getting really hurt. Even though people sometimes, that's part of the kink too, is that they like being hurt. I don't know. Okay, I'm going on a tangent again. I need to get back to what I was talking about. So yeah, we got the ghosts, zombies. We haven't talked about zombies yet. Zombies, I don't think are a real thing either. I don't think things can rise from the dead. I think if there were going to be a zombie invasion, it would be something akin to like rabies, or like some kind of disease that makes people go crazy. But they're not dead. They're not a lot. Like once you kill someone, then they're dead. Or like once they get it, they're still alive, and their just brain just been screwed up. But they're still living beings. So I don't think there's a possibility of actual living dead. It's been recorded nowhere in nature. What is really creepy though is if you've seen videos of like skinned frogs for like when they're going to cook like frog legs, if you put salt in them, the muscles start spasming and moving around. They're not alive. Their just body is moving just because of the nerves hitting the salt. So I kind of imagine like if there was going to be a real zombie, what if it was like that? What if it was just like it had no sentience, it had no like movement on its own. It just was kind of like spasming and it made it very, very efficient. It wouldn't be very scary, maybe disturbing to look at. At least you know that if it bit you, it wouldn't infect you. It just was it's just doing its own thing just because its nerves are twisting up. Maybe there's too much salt on their raw tissue. So yeah, I don't think there's werewolves. I don't think there's vampires, and I don't think there's zombies. I do know there are witches. I know plenty of witches, but again, it's one of those things that you can just identify as. I don't believe in real magic. I think magic is sort of magic to me is being able to implant into something into your mind. Like, here, I'll cast a spell on the viewer right now. Picture a naked clown. I just put a spell on you because you picture that. I put something in your brain that wasn't supposed to be there. You didn't want to see it. You didn't want to have to think about a naked clown, but I made it to you. I convinced you to see it by way of what I said. Now you have a naked clown in your brain. It's all my fault. Guess I'm a wizard. No, it's just another way of communication, another way of essentially manipulation. You can cast spells, and that's why when someone says I cast a spell on you, it's not a real spell. There's no real magic. It's the influence of the magic and making you believe that you have been cursed, and therefore you can kind of create. You can almost create the spell just by your own doing, by kind of following out unintentionally what the spell said. Like I'm gonna cast a spell on you, and if you really believe that the spell was true, you can believe that spell was cast on you and start unintentionally acting out what that spell says for you to do. Like, I curse you to get in a car accident, and then one day you're like on the highway, really tensed up and afraid, and thinking like, oh shit, they cast a spell on me, and then from your own nerves being worried about it, that could cause you to crash, and then you've kind of fulfilled the magic and so forth. Therefore, the spell technically came true, but it was kind of by your own doing. That's what I think magic is. I think magic is manipulation of the mind. Same thing goes with like psychokinesis and I don't believe in telekinesis I think it's psychokinesis, the one where you can move objects with your mind. Definitely don't believe in that. If there was something like that, that would be pretty cool though. That would be my superpower, just to like be sitting there chilling, like, hey, grab my beer. No, I don't know. That just seems like a superpower to me. And that's the other thing is I don't really believe in superpowers themselves. I don't think anybody has a power. They have a skill. Like if you see someone who can just lift a car, you don't think about the hours, days, weeks that person went through training of lifting to suddenly being able to pick up a car. All you see is the fact that they picked up a car. And it's going to look like they must have super strength. No, they just had a lot of training. The same thing with people who can like jump like 10 feet in the air, or people who can like balance like an entire refrigerator on their chest or whatever. That doesn't just happen. You just don't see all the stuff, all the parts where they did all the practicing. And so to you, it looks like, oh, he must have a superpower. But there's no magic. There's no superpower. It's just your own mind. You have the power. The power is your mind. You just gotta, if you use it right, it can come off as supernatural. But it's not supernatural. It's a real thing. It's a real way to manipulate the world you exist in just by looking at things differently. So yeah, that's kind of some of my thoughts on the supernatural and what could be some possible explanations, or if we're thinking like theoretical explanations of. I think the most likely is that there are aliens, I think. And secondly, I think second place would be that there are Sasquatches. And I think the two might be kind of related. I don't know how, but there's a lot of links to the Sasquatch and UFOs. I've seen plenty of things, my own experience and other people's experiences, that link these two together. Like for instance, when I saw that UFO in the sky in my neighborhood, that was the that was in the same spot where I heard that really terrifying scream of that creature. So who knows? Maybe there's a connection. Maybe Sasquatches are just another breed of aliens. I don't know. But I'm really excited about where the government is going with the ex, ex, releasing all the stuff about UFOs, because up until this point, uh, that it's always just been no, there's no aliens, and now they're kind of like, well, we're not saying they're not aliens. So it's an exciting time, and as we progress into this very crazy year, um, starting off with this Ukraine thing, I'm going to continue to kind of talk about this stuff, and hopefully, if I gain any interest in you guys, give me topic to talk about, and I'll do my best to give my opinions on them, or try to use my analytical brain to kind of figure out what might be the logical explanation for some of this stuff. So, yeah, thanks for listening. I know I kind of got on a tangent a few times, but it's good to talk to you guys, and I like seeing you guys. And remember to share my videos, and please check out my older content, some of the short films. There's a lot of really funny stuff in there that I'm real proud of. But yeah, check out my feature tomorrow, maybe Tune Out, Ghost Fisher, all those. I would love to share with you guys that stuff, because they're all building up to something much bigger down the line that I can't wait to share with you guys. It's just not ready yet. It's years and years in the making. I've been working, 13 years on what I call my passion 10. There's 10 stories that I've been working on for the last 12 years, 13 years. And someday, very soon, I'm going to start getting into the production of the first one. Tomorrow, maybe in Tune Out, we're not part of that. They were sort of my stepping stones to kind of like, I need to learn how to make a movie. So before I make my passion projects, I got to make some of these smaller ones first to kind of get my learn the skills. But now I'm ready to do something big. And for anybody who likes what I talk about, like Bigfoots and aliens and stuff, it's right up your alley, because it's gonna get crazy. And hopefully I can get these made. Like if this channel continues and I get some people to permanent subscribers and views, I could get there and I can make this stuff, and I can make it for you, because I'm making all this is for you guys. You've been wonderful the last 2 years. Just in 2 years, I feel like I've lived a lifetime of internet fame here. But even in that short amount of time, you guys have shown me so much support, and I am really happy. And I want to get back to you guys, so I want to show you guys what's coming, because I'm so stoked about it. Maybe I'll do a video kind of talking about some of these projects. Not now, but maybe a little bit later I'll do that. It depends on how tough my personal life is going right now. I have some stuff I have to get over and deal with. But after that, it's game time. So anyway, thanks for watching. Please subscribe, like, share, watch my other movies. Do whatever you want to, or don't. That's an option too. All right, take care, guys.